Yep.
Hi, welcome to Don't Ask That Question. I'm Kelly O'Mara, and my guest today is Catherine Austin Fitz. If I had to describe Catherine's expertise, I'd say she's a woman who knows how the money works. As background, Catherine is the president of Solari Inc. She's the publisher of Solari Report and managing member of Solari Investment Advisory Services, LLC. Catherine served as managing director and member of the board of directors of the Wall Street investment bank Dillon Read & Company, Inc. She served as Assistant Secretary of Housing and Federal Housing Commissioner at the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development in the first Bush administration, and was the president of Hamilton Securities Group, Inc. Catherine has designed and closed over $25 billion of transactions and investments to date, and has led portfolio and investment strategy for $300 billion of financial assets and liabilities. Catherine graduated from the University of Pennsylvania with BA and the Wharton School with an MBA. She studied Mandarin Chinese at the Chinese University of Hong Kong, and she blogs for the Solari Report at solari.com. Years ago, when I was a reporter at the Washington Times Insight magazine, I met Catherine and was a recipient of Catherine's tutelage about money. In short, Catherine was good enough to teach a cub reporter how to read the federal government's financial statements. This is not an easy task, and I think it's purposeful. But Catherine was generous in her time with me, and I went on to write yearly articles about the missing money in the federal government. Today, we're going to talk about some of the revelations that came out of those articles and how not only has bad accounting continued in the federal government, but it appears to have gone completely insane. For example, when I first reported on the missing money in September of 2001, the Department of Defense could not account for $1 trillion. Today, unbelievably, nearly 21 trillion, trillion, cannot be accounted for at the Department of Defense. Much has occurred since my reporting on the missing money in the government, and Catherine and I are going to discuss what the heck is going on and talk about whether we are beyond the correction point. So Catherine, thank you for coming on my show.
Thank you, Kelly. I can't believe we're still doing missing money stories.
I know, it's
our
insane.
first missing money story was 1999. Your first one was 1999, right?
Well, you know, it's the one that I found most interesting was actually the Rumsfeld report, because the one I did, right. Because that was literally right before 9/11. And
so you called me that Monday. We had a call that Monday. I don't know if you remember the church story, because I called you on Sunday and I said, Kelly, I got it in the sermon this weekend. We're going to war in the Middle East. And you said, I haven't heard anything about it. But then on Monday, you called me and said, Rumsfeld just held a press conference and basically said they're missing 2.3 trillion.
Right. And
you had your big cover story was coming out that Friday.
Yeah.
4 days later. And we thought he was doing a modified hangout in front of your story. Remember?
Yeah, and I today I still think he was. I think he was.
I think he was too.
You know, but let's do this. Let's go through steps here, because I think it's important for people to understand, kind of on an 8th grade level. I know this will be tough, but let's talk about the annual report process. So in the federal government, Congress appropriates funds to all the federal agencies. And of course, all the agencies tell Congress, oh, I need this much money for, various things. And Congress goes, okay, this is good. We'll give you this amount of money, right? But they also say that we want an accounting of that money. So
you start the appropriation process with a budget that says, here's the plan to spend money, and the Congress approves the budget or adjusts the budget, and that's the final budget. And then the agencies are authorized to spend that money and are required to produce a report saying, here's how we spent the money, here's what happened with the money.
Right.
So you have a plan to spend the money, and then you have a report on how the money was spent.
Right. So in 1995, I believe 95 is the year that they, the Congress said, okay, we need these reports to be, provided to Congress on a yearly basis, blah, 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 and we're going to grade you. That's when they came up with the grading system.
Right. Right.
A, B, C, D, E, F, fail. And so what we found out when I first started writing about it, obviously, was that the Department of Defense, they were the largest recipients of the greatest amount of funds, was unable to account for a huge amount of money. And therefore, the federal government in total couldn't balance their checkbook. In other words, every month we do.
So I was part of a group of people in the Bush administration who got laws passed saying they had to produce audited financial statements at the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And then OMB got very enthusiastic about it and took that rule government-wide, with the condition also that any insurance or credit programs had to be accounted for on a sort of annually accountable basis, which was a huge change. So a process began in 1995 where they started to report the fact that they weren't going to comply. So they would say, we're supposed to have audited financial statements, subject to these provisions, and we can't. And one of the reasons we can't is we have 59 billion of undocumentable adjustments. So the failure to produce audited financial statements led to a progressive reporting of their undocumentable adjustments, which means there was spending going on that was not disclosed, and it appeared, because of the size of the spending, was not approved.
So, having worked very high up in a federal agency, HUD, how does that happen? How do you not account for the money? How does that happen that money is not accounted for?
It's very simple. If you simply don't account for the money every year, and then Congress votes and approves a new budget, you just keep going. So your bank, if you and I were to behave that way, our bank would not affect our transactions. So the New York Fed is the depository for the US government, and the New York Fed is willing to transact, even though the government is not complying with the laws related to appropriation or disclosure. Okay. So the government's breaking law. The transactions, clearly, some of them have to be illegal, but the bank continues to affect the transactions, and Congress continues to vote for more appropriations.
So they keep appropriating money, even though they can't account for what they were given last year, or in this case with the Department of Defense, they can't account for what the last 20 years.
When I was still in Washington, I went to meet, thanks to you, with the chief of staff to the appropriator who oversees HUD, which was one of the agencies where the money was going missing. And I was meeting with them. It was just one-on-one, and they said to me, "What do you think is going on in HUD?" And I said, "I don't know. What do you think is going on in HUD?" And they said, "HUD is being run as a criminal enterprise." And I remember looking at them and saying, "I don't disagree." Now, remember, this is the chief of staff to the senator who oversees appropriations for both HUD and Treasury and a group of other agencies. That year, that committee voted, that appropriations committee voted out, and the Senate and the House approved a big increase for HUD. Mm-hmm. Now, if they believed HUD was being run as a criminal enterprise, but they continued to grow the appropriations, then what you've got is a system that is working, and is working on a completely different model than what's envisioned in the laws. So it's operating outside of the laws, and you have the Treasury Department, the New York Fed, and its banks, who are both owners and agents, who are also selling securities. So you have the securities operation, the banking operation, the Department of Justice, and the Treasury, all doing this, all running the government on a model that is outside of both the Constitution and the financial management laws and regulations.
Mm-hmm. So let's do this. Let's go through some past history just to hear what they had to say in the way back. So one of the first articles I wrote was Rumsfeld Inherits a Financial Mess, September 3rd, 2001. So basically it says the Pentagon had to make 4.4 trillion in adjustments to the DoD books just to compile the financial statement, and were unable to reliably support 1.1 trillion in spending. The Government Accountability Office wrote that the Pentagon, quote, continues to confront pervasive and complex financial management problems and has been on our list of high-risk areas vulnerable to waste, fraud, abuse, and mismanagement since 1995, when it all began, when the real accounting of government money.
Well, they were required to produce audited financial statements in 1995, and every year since then, they've declined to produce those. They finally, I think in 2017, said they had an audit, but of course they couldn't produce audited financial statements. And finally, in fiscal 1990, or in 2018, they adopted an administrative policy. So not a constitutional amendment, not a financial management law, not a regulation pursuant to a financial management law, an administrative policy, which is junior. And that administrative policy statement, FASB Statement 56, took the position that they didn't have to obey the Constitution, the financial management laws, and the regulations. They could take portions of their books by a secret process agreed to by a secret group of people and make it secret. And not only for the 24 covered agencies, but sort of 150 plus related commissions and governmental entities. And if you combine that with the national security waivers, it also applies to the banks and big contractors and defense contractors who do business with the government, which means, net, that the US securities market, the majority of the US securities market has financial disclosure, which is meaningless.
Okay, so let me ask you, with FASB 56, do you think they just finally said, hey, let's just come up with, we're never gonna do an audit, okay? We're never gonna get an audit out of DoD. So let's just make up an administrative rule that under national security, because that's what FASB 56 is, it has to be for national security issues that they don't have to tell you how they spent the money. Is that right?
Well, I don't know. It's a secret process by secret, but you can't know who's making the decisions. You can't know what the process is.
I thought it had to be someone who had security. It had to be for national security.
Well, they have to have a certain security clearance, but there's no way. When you look at the financial statements of the Department of Defense, you have no idea what it represents. In other words, if you look at what could have been taken out or is not included, it's impossible to say what it really means.
So I'm trying to get an example here that maybe, so let's say that the, DOD, they go, oh, we don't know where all that money went. So we're going to say that, we purchased some sort of aircraft that's, covered by national security, and that's it. We don't have to tell you how much. We don't have to tell you what it is. It could be a screwdriver.
And we don't have to put it on our balance sheet.
Right. And at the end of the day, they just write a number.
So let me give you an example. If we wanted to build an independent army in the Ukraine, so we wanted to take $100 billion and create an entire mercenary army with weapons and everything else, and build a sufficient capacity in the Ukraine to have a war, they could do it. And it would all be secret.
And that money would never, it would not even show up on the books. Period, right?
Right, because remember, using the same techniques that have been used along the way, you can issue the treasuries off balance sheet. So they don't show up on the balance sheet, and then you can spend the money in a way that doesn't go through the financial statements or isn't on the balance sheet.
And in the case of the Ukrainian army, that you're not really building an army, it's you're doling out cash to whoever. I mean, that's really where it could go.
Right.
Interesting.
In other words, we anything is possible. So when you have this much, I mean, here, this is the old adage, crime that pays is crime that stays. We have been watching the financial accounts of the US government get further and further and further away from the law. And the model get further and further away from the law, to the point where the financial statements and the disclosure related to the securities is meaningless. So when Dr. Mark Skidmore from Michigan State University did a survey on the missing money, and in 2017, the year before, I had found 12 trillion that was missing so far. He and a group of graduate students did a complete survey of HUD and DOD and identified a total of 21 trillion. At the time he published that report, Kelly, the outstanding debt of the US government was 21 trillion. So imagine you sell 21 trillion of Treasury securities to American pension funds. You turn around, you put the money in the Treasury, the money leaves out the back door, right? 21 trillion of undocumentable adjustments. Now, the question is, are you bankrupt, or has there been a bank robbery? Because there's a difference. There's a difference between being bankrupt and being robbed. Because in a system that big, you can recapture those assets. There is legal liability for the banks and contractors who affected those illegal transactions.
But no, because now there really isn't, because they're not even required, if it's national security, to even report it. Period.
Well, they're not required to report it. The question is, in theory, if the law was really going to be applied, I mean, those records exist. The money went from here to here. There are records. And it's very interesting. In 2015, the largest undocumentable adjustments was 2015, 6.5 trillion went missing. Right after that happened, the largest contractor running information and payment systems for DOD and earlier for HUD spun their IT division out to a new firm. And I thought, okay, they're trying to get the liability off their balance sheet. Skidmore comes out with his report, and it was a week or two later, there was suddenly a fire at the New York Fed on a Saturday. The roof came on fire because apparently somebody in the basement was using an old fireplace on Saturday at the Fed in the fall.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wonder what they were doing. Because the New York Fed can't spin their banking division off to a new company, right?
Yeah, but I mean, again, I go back to with this new administrative accounting, if they're not required to even, put it on the books because of national security, basically the whole DOD could be it's just black budget. Because that's
the whole DOD. So essentially, when you and I started covering these issues, what we saw was, there was a series of laws and executive orders that helped build what I call the hidden system of finance in the black budget. And it grew and grew and grew in size and importance. And then we watched the money start to go missing in fiscal 1998. So that was October 1, 1997 is when it started. So the money started to go missing. And then 9/11 happened, and you were able to engineer so many more financial transactions as a result. Mm-hmm. So 9/11 happened 4 days before your big cover story was supposed to come out on the missing money. Mm-hmm. And as soon as 9/11 happened, nobody cared about the missing money anymore. Right. And I'll never forget, later that year, or the next year, I went to a town hall meeting of a Republican congressman from Tennessee who was on both the budget and the Defense Appropriation Committee. And I said to him in front of like 30 of my neighbors, there's 3.3 trillion missing at the Department of Defense. And he said, yes, I know. And suddenly everybody was like, what? He admits this. And I said, what are you doing about it? And he looked at me and he said, nothing. There's nothing I can do. And of course, they had just voted for a $48 billion increase as a result of 9/11. Right. But the Patriot Act and everything that was going on permitted explosive spending, with essentially, significantly less accountability. So you continue to grow the sort of secret economy and grow and grow and grow. And then you hit FASB, FASB 56. One of the most important things that happened along the way was the national security. The president in 2006, this is George W. Bush, delegated the national security waiver to the national security director or intelligence director, giving him the power to waive SEC compliance for companies doing business with the government. So let me go back. You can, with FASB 56, you can basically, I believe, finance an entire private army in Ukraine, issuing treasuries off balance sheet, spending the money to build an army in Ukraine, and all the corporations who are building that army and maintaining that army, don't have to report it under SEC rules.
So it's on both ends.
Because they got a waiver.
It's on both ends.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is the problem when you look at securities in the US securities market. If you're looking at an entity that does a lot of business with the government, or is very dependent on the government, or if you're looking at Treasury Securities, what is, if all the money Treasury Securities finance disappears out the back door, what is a Treasury security worth?
Well, what is it worth anyway? I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we're a debtor nation. In other words, we don't take in
but here's the money. Thing. If I've financed, so the United States, the land, the real estate, the assets are incredibly valuable. So if I've financed $21 trillion of spaceships and underground bases, and I have those on my balance sheet, those are exceptionally valuable assets, right? Mm-hmm. If, however, I've moved them off my balance sheet and put them into corporate ownership and hands, so the corporations have the assets and I have the debt, mm-hmm. Then I'm something else. Now, make no mistake about it. You know who the biggest buyers of US Treasury securities are?
China?
US pension funds.
Oh.
Right. So this is sort of a very Masonic way to instill financial responsibility in the general population, is basically, when you can't get a financially responsible budget or solution, you simply get the American people to loan their retirement savings to finance a financially irresponsible operation, and they end up with paper that's, may or may not be worthless. Mm-hmm. So basically, you've socked it to the taxpayers. So the taxpayers think they have retirement savings, but in fact, they don't. They have phony baloney paper, which is basically a put to themselves. In other words, when the day comes to back up that paper, it's backed up by them. They're obligated to pay it off.
Wow.
So they have an IOU for themselves.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, okay, so let's do this. Let's excuse me. Let's go on and just go through the progression of the nonsense over the years, right? Uh-huh. So that was first article, 2001. Can't account for more than $1 trillion. So then we move on to the 2002. Government fails fiscal finance test, okay? So, again, we're going to quote David Walker, the United States Comptroller General, and he says, to date, none of the military services or major DoD components have passed the test of an independent financial audit. DoD faces financial management problems that are pervasive you'll get to know this almost by heart. Pervasive, complex, long-standing, and deeply rooted in virtually all business operations throughout the department. It says that in fiscal year 2001, we did not attempt to quantify amounts of unsupported accounting entries. However, we did confirm that DoD continued to enter material amounts of unsupported accounting entries to the financial data. So they can't account for it, but we're keep putting it in there just because, that's what we're requested to do. So, in fact, every agency almost that year, there were two agencies that failed outright, Department of Agriculture and Department of Defense, and the rest all had D's. No one was doing well on the fiscal financial at that point, right? So that's 2 years in a row.
I think when your big cover story, The Missing Money, came out, it was something like 83% of the total budget of the federal government, basically couldn't pass the basic test.
Right. And always, to this day, it is the Department of Defense that is responsible always for the entire federal government being able to basically balance its checkbook, because theirs is just so large, and without it, we just can't do it. And we haven't for 21 years since I started.
Well, I'm presuming with FASB 56 that now the federal government can produce audited financial statements, because they could take the position, which I would disagree with, but they can take the position with the auditors that they can make a whole chunk of the budget secret without, in other words, by making a whole portion of the budget secret or the financial secret, and that's considered lawful, they can then make the rest auditable.
So, but let's go back to step one, which is DoD sits in front of the Appropriations Committee, right? Every year, and they go, we need more money. We need this money to do such and such and such and such. When they go begging for those funds before Congress, it's a budget. They have to present a budget, what we need the money for. Is that correct?
Yes.
So it's really not black at the end of the day. If they're asking for a specific...
There are little pieces that are black, but essentially the majority of it is not supposed to be black. And some of the black portions are subject to disclosure to select committees.
No, but what I'm saying is, again, I know we have a black budget that they don't even have to report on. I get that.
Right.
But if they're going in before appropriations and saying, okay, this year's budget, this is what we need this much money for. We need another $500 billion for, new planes, new tanks.
Well, whatever. Here's the thing. I mean, if I was in Congress, I would say, I'm not giving you a dime until you report on where the money you spent last year is.
Well, exactly. I was going to get to this later, is, everybody has a responsibility. As a taxpayer, I pay my taxes so that they have the funds to do, put street lights out in my street, or, whatever. Okay. And I'm fine with that. I like street lights. What is not fine as a taxpayer, and I think, anybody watching this would agree, is, you have to tell me where you spent the money. You have to account for it. Right. So I felt the same way when I was in Congress. I thought, God, when they come begging every year, how about we bring up the fact that what happened to last year's money, right?
Right.
You want us to give you more money and you can't tell us what you did with last year's money?
Well, my favorite one was when you go back to where we started, the first one we found that we noticed was, I think it was fiscal 1999, 59 billion went missing from HUD. And the HUD Inspector General, so the lead auditor of the agency, reports it, but doesn't bother to go find out where it went. And just says, oh, we don't want this to happen next year. There's 59 billion missing, and that's it. We're going to close. We're going to say, we're going to adjust the accounts by saying undocumentable adjustments, 59 billion. And we're too busy to go find out where it went or get it back.
Wasn't Andrew Cuomo
the
head of HUD at the time?
Yeah, remember Andrew Cuomo started complaining to your editors about the fact that you mentioned 59 billion was missing from his agency.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, our readers wanted to know. They were curious, so we did it. But so I just don't understand. Let's go one step further. Maybe this is telling us they're telling us along the way how much respect they have for the American taxpayer. Okay, so we keep getting the same thing. So now we'll fast forward to a 2004 article, Treasury checks and unbalances. The federal government for the 7th consecutive year was unable to balance its books. So again, they say the federal government, you'll love this one, Catherine, the federal government has come a long way since the first government-wide report subject to audit issued in March of 1998 for fiscal year 1997. At that time, only 8 of 24 agencies received clean opinions. Today, 20 of 24 federal agencies received clean opinions. However, they said, we designated the serious financial management problems at DOD as high risk since 1995. Says overhauling DOD's financial management operations represents a challenge that goes far beyond financial accounting to the very fiber of DOD's range of business operations. DOD's financial management problems are pervasive, complex, long-standing, and deeply rooted in virtually all business operations throughout the department. This is their line. This is just, it's pervasive, complex, and deeply rooted. Every single time. Okay, that's funny, right? So when I was looking back at all these articles, I'm like, oh my God, it's the same thing every year, right?
Well, it's really funny because, it's always easier for me to unpack the HUD financials just because I ran a significant portion of the operation. And I think when Skidmore in 2017, I went through several of the most recent HUD financials. And all their excuses on why they couldn't produce financials on this part of the operation, that it's just complete, it's just complete hooey. I mean, I could take 10 college kids with pencils and we could go in and figure it out and fix it. Do you know what I mean?
That's funny you should bring that up because I remember when you were sort of teaching me all of this.
Yeah.
And I was talking to or interviewing David Walker, the Comptroller General. I asked him a question, well, because at DOD, they were saying the computers don't talk to one another. That's why we can't account for the money, right? So I asked David Walker, well, who has the contracts to make those computers?
He would never tell you.
He would never tell me. Never.
Right.
He didn't know.
Now, I don't know if you remember this because I worked just to help her do it. And I think you helped me do it. Cynthia McKinney nailed Rumsfeld and his controller on who has the contracts, and they refused to tell him. They said they'd report later, but they didn't.
Right. But nobody did. Congress didn't. I called appropriations. I called armed services. I spoke to, members. The Comptroller General of the United States had no idea who the contracts were, who were responsible for, and let's add, they were
actually, if you look at
millions of dollars.
If you look at the fact that you had one contractor running the majority of the information systems and payment systems at DOD, it's inconceivable to me that David Walker didn't know who it was.
Okay, well, again, this was his response.
Right? No, I know.
Call him a liar to his face, but this was important information. If this is what they're falling back on,
but this is like you telling me that you forgot the town you lived in. I know I live in Kansas, but I forget the name of it. It's a municipality in the middle of Kansas, but I can't think of it offhand.
Right. So again, why that would have been important is if we know who the contractor is, who's getting paid hundreds of millions of dollars to make sure that all the computers in DOD talk to one another. Well, then we can get. Who
gets paid to make sure that the money going out equates to the records of the money going out, and the securities getting sold equate to the records of the securities getting sold. That's what we're talking about. Something we don't need computers talking to each other. We need pencils just making sure the bank accounts reconcile to the accounts, and it literally give me a bunch of high school or college kids with some pencils, and this is easy to do.
Right. And that's what you said to me, actually, after I told you about my interview with Walker. And you said, well, if the computers aren't talking to one another, how about paper and pencil? It worked for a long time. And I was like, God, it's brilliant. Exactly. Right.
Right.
And then you go, okay. And so then we go, oh, we were also talking, like, what would happen if Walmart, okay, said to the federal government, IRS, we just can't account for all that money we made last year. We just don't have the paper.
We can't find it.
Just can't find it.
Computers aren't talking to each other, but we won't do it next year.
Right. So
bear with us.
Do you think they'd get away with that?
No, their banks would shut. I mean, under the law, their banks would shut down their transactions, et cetera. I mean, this is why this all comes back to the New York Fed as depository, because you have a private bank. The New York Fed is owned by its member banks. So it's owned by the private banks. And those banks act as the agent, for the accounts and custodian and other servicing that they do. And the minute that those agencies those banks don't transact these payments, they can only make 21 trillion of unsupported spending if they have, somebody selling the securities that finance it, in addition to the taxes, and somebody affecting the transactions. The banks know. I mean, JP Morgan Chase at HUD knows. It's not like a mistake. They know exactly what's going on.
So again, I don't know, you're the expert. Why, I'll throw it out there. Why don't we just audit the banks that handle the money for them, for DOD?
So I'm assuming
is it a stupid question?
No, but you have a financial model, and that financial model is exceptionally dependent on warfare and organized crime. And as long as enough people in the system are making money off of it, they don't want to buck, they don't want to buck the trend. So do you remember the red button story? When I was giving a speech in Philadelphia, and I told the story of the Department of Justice during the Dark Alliance allegation testimony in Congress. The Department of Justice had told you that the U.S. Banking system, financial system, launders $500 billion to $1 trillion a year of all illegal money. So that's narcotics trafficking, illegal gambling, everything. And so I was using that, and I said to this wonderful group of people in the audience, what would happen if we stopped being the global leader in laundering illegal money? And they said, we had a little conversation. They said, well, our taxes might go up and we'd have trouble financing the government deficit. And the stock market might go down because the people who control that money would go to Singapore or Zurich or Hong Kong or London. And I said, okay, let's pretend there's a big red button up on the lectern. If you push that button, you can stop all hard narcotics trafficking in your neighborhood, your town, your state tomorrow. Who here will push the button? And out of an audience of 100 people, only one would push the button. And I said to them, why would you not push the button? And they said, well, we don't want our taxes to go up, and we don't want the money to go, to London, and we don't want to, our government checks to stop. So you've built a model that is heavily dependent on all of these shenanigans. And the message to, everybody in the system is, if you play ball, they'll take care of you. And if you don't play ball, they'll kill you. So, I spent 11 years and $6 million. I counted. I worked for free for 36,000 hours. Okay. So not everybody feels like spending $6 million and working for free for 36,000 hours to have a fight with these guys about the fact that money's disappearing. Right?
Right.
Right. So you have a system, and that system is functioning. Well, what I call it is a financial coup, because I think what happened was in 1995, when they couldn't craft a financially responsible budget, they made a decision. And if you read my online book, Dylan Reed and the Aristocracy of Stock Profits, it describes this. But they made a decision. That's it. We give up. Democracy doesn't work. We're sucking all the money out that we can take. And it was a financial coup. We're just going to do it. We're going to re-engineer the entire governance system and financial system on the just do it method. We're just going to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so
it's working.
Yeah. Yeah, it is working.
It's working well because we found out, 21 years ago that this was happening. And what's happened since then? Has it gotten better or
Well, you
worse?
know, it's really interesting because what I said to people in 98, 99, 2000, 2001, 2, 3, 4, et cetera, what I said was, look, they've made a decision. You know, the baby boomers have saved and saved and saved and saved, and they put all that money in the pension fund. And they basically said, we're going to take that money and spend it on space and building a new civilization, you know, a new world order. And we're just going to leave you high and dry. They just took it.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, every year I would try to explain to people that that's what was happening. But they would get their statements from their pension fund and it would show their pension fund going up, and they couldn't fathom there was a problem. And they didn't understand it was going up, being stuffed with paper that in fact was in danger of being meaningless.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I just couldn't fathom that this was happening. Now, I think there are many, many reasons that contribute to it. But I will tell you, throughout that period, the people tried to stop the financial coup and warn people about the financial coup were not supported by the general population, as you know.
No, not at all.
Right.
But the question is, if you wanted to fix it, if we wanted to fix it, are we beyond correcting the missing money? Are we beyond it now that they've passed FASB 56 or actually haven't passed, they just decided?
So I think there are many people who say it's hopeless, the system is beyond repair. I don't believe that. One, because we still have a constitution, and we still have millions of people who believe in that constitution, willing to fight for that constitution. And to me, the Constitution and the laws of the Constitution are something both culturally and legally worth fighting for. And what I will tell you is every dime of that 21 trillion, whatever the real missing, you know, because that's an accounting figure from an untrustworthy source. So just because the government says that it's 21 trillion doesn't mean that I believe their numbers. I mean, if there's anything that's been proven is their numbers are not trustworthy.
Right.
Right. But you know, I believe clearly there are trillions of dollars missing, and I believe it can be gotten back, but it can only be gotten back if it's part of a plan to revert to a fundamentally productive economy. It can't be gotten back if we're just going to pull it back into the US government and waste more money. It's got to be part of a solution to get to a fundamentally productive culture and productive economy. So could it be done? Yes, in theory it could be done. You know, because nobody ever got anywhere in this world by complying with tyranny and pissing away trillions of dollars. You know, that's never a plan to get you to a productive place.
So do we have to make the taxpayers aware? I think about it and I go, well, what would it take for the taxpayers to finally say, you know, enough, open the window, I've had it, you know, what could make this issue sexy that would make elected
So
officials
the first thing that
listen?
happens, have you ever seen the movie They Live by John Carpenter?
No.
Oh, really? Oh, Kelly, you have to watch it. Okay, it's a science fiction movie, and aliens are invading and occupying the earth, but people can't see it because they've put up mind control cell towers and are putting everybody in a trance, and they can't see what's really going on. And a group of scientists get together and they make sunglasses, and if you put on the sunglasses, you can see, you know, who's a human and who's an alien and what's really going on. And anyway, but it's a metaphor about mind control. So if you look at the amount of entrainment and the amount of subliminal programming and the amount of high-tech mind control that's going on, you know, that to me is our single biggest obstacle. So let's just assume some people are not going to be able to put on the sunglasses and break through that trance. You need to get enough people together who who can break through that trance and appreciate that if you look at the fundamentals of what's happening, it doesn't have to, we don't have to go to an inhuman society, and we don't have to go to slavery. I mean, we have a choice here. If we continue to let this happen, we're gonna go into slavery, right? So, one of the reasons I started fighting when I did, and I continue to fight, is because whatever happens to me as a result of fighting, it's not as bad as being a slave.
Right.
Right. So can you get a critical mass of people to understand that where this is going is complete slavery? And if you can, then what those people need to understand is one of the tactics that will really help return this to an intelligent place is that the people doing this are violently and progressively and seriously outside the law, and the law can be used against them. They can be held accountable. But, part and parcel of that is, do you want to suck up to them and get a job offer, or do you want to hold them accountable?
Right. Well, let's look at it from the standpoint of Congress. Congress has the ability, they hold the purse strings, right? So nobody gets
They could stop this. They could stop this in an instant.
Yes.
Like that. Right.
And they don't. And why do you think that? Why do you think Congress?
Because I think they're scared.
Let's establish they know that DOD is a criminal enterprise. Let's assume that.
Right. So I mean, look at how many people got shot at the congressional baseball game. Do you see what I mean? We had the president of the United States in 1963 assassinated, in front of the cameras, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Who are they assassinated by? They're assassinated by the group that have been disappearing all the money. So I mean, here's the problem. You cannot change this from inside Washington. That's why I left Washington. In other words, if you're going to re-engineer the economy and the federal investment, you have to do it bottom up, one county at a time. What you're going to do in New York is totally different than what you need to do in Tulsa, right? So this has got to be bottom up, and it's got to come bottom up, from a county, state AG, state legislature level. And if this changes, it's going to be one county and one state at a time, turning it around. I mean, that's why you have, I just got a report from Tennessee that the General Assembly is going to vote for taking the sales tax off gold and silver and creating a depository for gold and silver, just like Texas. And you have states all around the country moving to do that, to make it easier to use gold and silver as a currency. Why are they doing that? Because they are being squeezed by the federal, the federal government is printing money out of thin air. That debasement is causing their inflation and expenses to go up. It's implementing policies that are destroying all their small business and their tax base. They're in this vicious squeeze and they need a way out.
So they're going to go to a real currency, real money.
Well, I think they're going to do many different things, but either they allow a rebuilding locally of their food supply and a rebuilding locally of their energy supply and a permission to allow people to transact locally, including with local currencies, including using gold and silver. Or there are no solutions. They're just going to get drained by the parasite until they're all dead.
So let me ask you, just for the heck of it, I'm going to throw it out there. DOD, I've always said, look, these are trained killers. This is what they do. Death, this is really, that's their whole mission, to kill and be good at it. And they are. Let's assume they're just great at it. Accounting systems and accounting is not what they're great at. Right?
Oh, I totally disagree.
How can you disagree if they can't account for all their money?
because they've just disappeared $21 trillion and got away with it. That's a pretty amazing. That's one of the best accounting tricks in the history of the world.
Well, it's not a trick. They just simply wrote in a law that, gave them, freedom to erase it. Basically, they don't have to report it on if it's national security, quote unquote.
Right, but here's the thing:
they don't have to report it.
The U.S. Army and the U.S. military has traditionally had a wealth of some of the greatest talent in the nation. And they have a contracting budget like you would not believe, where they can hire lots of publicly traded banks and corporations that have no problem producing audited financial statements in, year in, year out. Okay. So they have more resources than you can possibly imagine to make sure their books, now it's a far-flung operation, things go wrong. But if you look at, there is not one reason in the world why there should be more than a non-material amount of undocumentable adjustments every year at DOD. Now, one of the reasons I know that is I ran, the most complicated operations at the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And I know the investment I and my team made in making sure they had whatever resources and tools they needed to have impeccable financials. And I knew if you look at the resources they had and the contractors they had and the banks they had, it's impossible that they didn't have near perfect financial statements. I also, Kelly, I could take any HUD financial statement and if I were to go to work with a group of sort of talented people in accounting and graphic design, we could make them so easy to understand. You could take the federal budget, you could put it online, make it graphical, make it interesting, make it fun, and make it so easy to understand, right? Now, I, as Assistant Secretary of Housing, from the time I was Assistant Secretary to lead financial advisor to HUD until I just looked at the HUD financials a couple of years ago, I had to spend hours making sense of it. It was almost impossible to understand. And purposely so.
By purpose.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Purposely so.
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I had no clue until you taught me how to read the financials,
right.
21 years ago.
It was unbelievable.
So you don't think it would be a good idea? And again, I'm just throwing it out there because, I don't think working bottom up is going to happen in my lifetime.
Okay, so let me tell you a story. You never know. You have to understand. I'm a Christian, so you never know. When I settled the litigation, I owed a New York Fed member bank. And if you look at our report on taxation, which I think I mailed to you, I don't know if you got it yet.
I did.
But I tell this story in taxation. So when I settled the litigation and all the money came in, I turned to sort of settle with all my creditors. And I owed a New York Fed member bank $14,000. And at that time, the undocumentable adjustments were $14,000 per person for the entire population. So I wrote them and I said, I owe you $14,000 on a credit card, but you as a owner and agent of the New York Fed owe me $14,000 as a citizen for undocumentable transactions that you have illegally transacted. So I'm asserting a common law right of offset. I am going to take the position that you owe me $14,000 and I owe you $14,000. And so I'm calling us even. I'm going to pay back my $14,000 with the $14,000 you owe me. That's a common law right of offset. If you have any problem, here's the name and address of my attorney. Please feel free to contact them and we can negotiate from there. And I was prepared to litigate. And you know what happened? Nothing. I never heard another word from them. They just wrote off the $14,000.
Wow.
So I got my $14,000 back. Now I'm sure they got me back on the credit score. So they probably clawed some back, but now it's up to over $65,000 per person. So I only got 14. So I've got another 51,000 to go. But since I don't do business with any of those banks anymore,
So let me just ask you this. So, while we're working from the bottom up, would it not do any good to take away the finances from DOD? take them away, set them up in a separate agency if we have to. I mean, we create agencies all the time, just out of the blue. That DOD can have their budget, but a separate agency is the one that's going to go, okay, send us a bill, we'll pay it. We take it out of the hands.
Well, you already have that. It's called Congress, but they won't do it. I mean, that's your problem. You have to get Congress to do their job, and you have to get the people at DOD in a position to do their job as well. So, the first thing that has to happen to this is what you tried very hard to do, and that's bring transparency. Now, many, many people have not yet associated this problem with their inability to, pay for gas and afford food and inflation and other things bothering them. But a day is coming. I mean, think of it this way. You're paying a federal government that is shutting down your small business as an act of economic warfare. You're paying a local school board that's basically, filling your child with a curriculum that's going to make sure they fail in a global economy. Okay. So you're paying for people who are poisoning and destroying you and your family. And you can't keep paying for people to harm you because eventually you're going to die. So the day is coming when either we're willing to say, look, if you're going to break the laws related to financial management and the laws of the country in terms of your operation, we're going to escrow your money and hold you accountable. So, for example, it is theoretically possible for a state legislature, to authorize county or state escrows where people, they all put their money in the escrow. I'm going to grossly oversimplify now. They all put their money in the escrow, and you send enough money for the government debt and legitimate operations of DOD, sort of the necessary things. And you just say to the government, here's what you need for the national debt, and here's what you need for military. We're keeping the rest. Don't send us any money. Don't send any money here to Tennessee for our domestic spending. We'll take care of it ourselves. We'll just re-engineer it locally. Because you're in violation of the financial management law, and we as citizens have an obligation to make sure the money is spent lawfully.
Yeah, but if you say that it's not possible for Congress to act responsibly and, they get whacked just like anybody else, what makes you think that the federal government would let local state entities do it either?
I don't think the federal government will let it. The question is, can they stop it if enough states are willing to do it?
Okay.
Because if the states don't do it, they're going to fail. If you look at how the financial system is now engineered, it's engineered to ensure that the federal government and the federal credit mechanism can be used to bankrupt them and bankrupt their tax base. The federal credit mechanism is intentionally destroying their tax base. So the states are going to fail. The question is when and how.
When do you think that's going to happen?
I don't know. I don't know if you remember this story, but I'll never forget coming to Washington and coming by to see you. And we had been in a process where all the states were announcing these huge budget deficits. Mm-hmm. California was short $36 billion. And you and I thought, this system is finally going to blow up. And then all of a sudden, right before I got to Washington, it all disappeared. And suddenly the states had no problem and everything was fine. And I thought, I came to see you and I said, Kelly, what happened? And you said, oh, I just think they took, they're pulling money out of HUD and DOD and they just gave a ton of money to the states. And my immediate reaction is, no, you can't do that. And then I realized, well, of course they can do that. If you look at what they're doing now, right? They're so completely operating outside the laws. Of course they could do that.
Right. And especially, I don't want to get into a long thing about COVID, but, this whole drill with COVID over the last 2 years, a great, enormous amount of money has been sent to the states for use for COVID. And, is there going to be any accounting of that? No, there isn't.
Well, you have bought a tremendous number of parties schools, hospitals, other players into the system.
Mm-hmm.
And, what we're watching is a corruption that is reaching, galactic proportions. And I think the question is, how is this going to play out? Because you're producing a tremendous divide in the population of people who realize, it's not possible to run a modern society with no law. That's not possible.
Mm-hmm.
And Lavrov said, God bless him, he said, and he said it very quietly and seriously, he said, the Americans are not agreement capable. And I will just tell you, as an investor and a business person, dealing in this environment is very difficult, because you're talking about an establishment that doesn't keep its word. It doesn't obey the law. Everything is, it's the story of the scorpion and the frog. So we get back to, are there enough people who can break through the mind control and realize if there's no law, you can't have a modern functional society?
Well, I don't think most people even know about it. I don't think most people even consider the fact that the Department of Defense can't account for $21 trillion that it has been given. I don't think they even know it. How do you make that
right.
sexy?
No, I agree they don't.
The
but
average person know this so that they get angry? They go, wait, what do you mean 21 trillion? How do you make it sexy?
So here's what makes them angry. What makes them angry is they can't afford to pay for food. They can't afford to pay for gas. And they see billionaires getting richer and richer and richer. And they know intuitively that the federal government is at the heart of engineering that trade. So they know the federal government shut down 1 million businesses for no reason other than, the big publicly traded companies could pick up their market share. They understand that. So they understand the result. They don't understand the details and the mechanics, and they don't really care about the mechanics, but they understand that the game is rigged, and that basically the guys getting richer and richer are getting richer and richer because they're using taxpayers' credit and they're operating outside the law. They know.
I'm not sure. I don't know that I agree that they know. I don't know.
Really?
No, I don't think they know. I think they're busy raising their kids and going to work.
Yeah.
Doing their responsible thing. I don't know.
Right. And they're busy as so long as they can pay their expenses.
Exactly.
Right. The minute they have to pay taxes and they can't afford to feed their kids.
Right.
And they have to make a choice between tax money and paying their kids, buying food for their kids.
Right.
That's when it's going to hit.
When I went to an economic conference with you in London, you remember that? You were speaking at an economic conference. Anyway, I listened to one of the speakers, and he made a really good point. He said, look, when pieces of the pie get smaller, table manners change. And I thought, how perfect, right? And he was talking about, the money and when people start to get angry about what is going on. And I thought, oh, God, that's perfect. So anyway, on that note, we're going to wrap this up. I want to thank you, Catherine. As always, I think this was a very informative interview. Your diligence and commitment to exposing this issue is it's priceless. Let's say that.
Well, I just have to thank the guys who adopted FASB 56, because it basically retired me from the missing money issue, right?
No. No, because I have a feeling we're going to wake up next year and it's going to be, 26 trillion. I mean,
well, but with FASB 56, you don't have to have undocumentable adjustments. It can just all be secret, right?
Well, this is going to be very fun next time. This is going to be very fun. Let's see what the financials say next time. I never even thought about that.
I'm assuming the DOD will get to the point where they can say, oh, well, we had an audit, we passed. It's great. Right?
All right, Catherine, thank you so much.
Can I just end on one quick little note? Sure. So the Skidmore report comes out, and Skidmore is pressing DOD for more and more information and putting in FOIAs. And suddenly we dig out a report that DOD did on the undocumentable adjustments and the missing money. And half the title of the report and every number in the report is redacted. And this is an IG report. And Skidmore sent it to me, and he said, "Can this happen?" And I said, "I didn't know it could happen, but apparently it can happen." So, we're talking about something that is reaching the final stage of absurdity. It's the only way I could describe it.
Yeah.
But you have to promise me, one, thank you very much for doing this. You have to promise me you'll watch They Live. Okay.
I also want to say, look, everybody, please go to Solari.com. Catherine has an extremely helpful website information. In fact, I just want to show you this. She sent me one of her books. These are amazing, full of, chock full of information about how the money works, especially this one. It's called The Real Game of Missing Money. So I highly recommend you go to Solari.com and check out what they have available. And again, Catherine, thank you so much. I think
thank you, Kelly.
It's
great to be in cahoots again.
Yeah. Like I said, next year, let's see how they do the books next year.
Okay. I'm game.
All righty. Thank you so much, Catherine.